through Zoom, there will be a form on the comment section. You can use this form to ask questions to the candidates. For those joining us in the room, the QR code for the form to ask questions have been posted around the room, and there's also flyers that you see the QR code to that form. There's also a flyer here in the room, each row, with a QR code to the election website with information for each candidate. All questions submitted will be reviewed and handed to me, and I will be asking those questions for you. When submitting questions, you can add information about yourself, which I will read out loud as I ask the question. However, that is not mandatory. Additionally, I would like to ask the audience to restrict any clapping, shouting, and other disruptive behavior that could interrupt or interfere with the debate when candidates, panelists, or myself are talking. This is just to ensure that we stay on time and that we get to as many questions as we can. For the following two debates, we will have two different panelists. The first two debates will only have one panelist, which will be different for each one. So for the first debate, we will have the debate for the Associate Vice President of Academic Affairs. The race is currently unopposed, and the candidate for that is Calista Barkley. You can stand and say that's fine. The candidate will start off with a 2-minute statement from the about her campaign, and that's it. You can start with them.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Calista Barkley, and like Angel said, I'm running for the position of Associate Vice President of Academic Affairs. I made the decision to run for AVP of Academic Affairs because I love the work it entails. I'm passionate about students and their academic success, and I thrive off being a voice for them. My platform is similar to the platform I created last year, in that it focuses on access to financial aid and scholarships, as well as increasing our retention and graduation rates. I also have made a commitment to concentrate also on affordable learning materials and potentially work towards getting courses marked for low cost and no cost learning materials. Besides these points, I believe my main goal is to hear what students need to be successful academically, so that may also include conversations around topics such as academic advising, course availability, and course requirements. I'm open to working with any and all students to appreciate their perspective on these matters. What I think stands out the most about me as a candidate in this role is that I have had the time and opportunity to learn about the various aspects of anything academic related in higher education, which not only makes me qualified for the role, but also makes me increasingly more eager to be a voice for Boise State students.
Thank you. I have already reviewed the rules with all of the candidates previously, but the candidate will now have 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer each question from the panelists and the audience respectively as well. So we will start with the first panelist for this debate, which is Brandon Black, a news editor from the Arbiter.
Yeah, there we go. So, thanks for being here. On ASBSU's election website, you say that you will, quote, work to identify students who struggle, whether that be financially, academically, or mentally, with the intent to create more resources for them to fulfill their potential. How do you plan to go about this?
So I think some of those populations in relation to our strategic enrollment retention plan, which is the university's strategic goal to close equity gaps. Those groups are Pell eligible students, first generation students, Latinx students, and rural students. And so those groups have already been identified. And it can be anybody who struggles in any of the regards that I mentioned, academically, financially, emotionally. And so I think just increasing awareness about ASBSU to close those gaps and help anybody in that regard would be the best step. And making sure that everybody at ASBSU is aware of all the resources that we have on campus to help guide those students to those resources.
Thank you. And how do you plan on increasing retention rates?
So I think an important part of what I mentioned with the strategic enrollment retention plan is that I have been a student voice in that room a couple times now. And with a goal like that, I think a student perspective is most needed because it is about student success. And so, literally right before this debate, I was in a room with 100 staff, faculty, and administration members at a CERB summit to bring that perspective forth and say how we feel about certain things and what our the strategies and the resources that matter most to us. And so that's part of goes along with my goal with financial burden is a huge part of why students are not as successful as they could be. And so increasing scholarships, we can't change, financial aid is the way it is based on how the government decides that. But increasing scholarships, awareness about scholarships is something that I will continue to do and I have done in the past.
And having been in office for a year at this point, what have you accomplished and what more do you intend to do?
So I think what's really important to point out about having the role for a year is that it hasn't just been a title, it's been a lot of work every day, and I have put my heart and soul into it. I really do believe that. And something cool about going into it a second year is that I don't have any barriers in creating relationships with the stakeholders that are necessary to accomplish my goals. So having that as experience is really important. And what I intend to do is just continue the work that I've been doing. So something I did with increasing scholarship awareness was I tabled for the first 2 days before the scholarship being FAFSA closed and gave students QR codes. It was something super simple, but I think it had a big impact because many of those students that I came into contact with had absolutely no idea that the FAFSA and that scholarship applications were closing. But it is in my mind, I think that every student needs help financially. And so taking a little step like that, where I am helping one student is a big win for me. And I hope to do that again.
Yeah, that includes my questions. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and transition then to a couple of questions from the audience. So the first question is, what is your position on the current proposed constitution that will be on the ballot this upcoming election?
So as some of you may know in the room, I was chair of the Constitutional Convention. And so in this role, I had to maintain structure and order in the meetings for this. And I mostly took a neutral stance on the matter during my time as chair. And as some of you may know, I chose to vote yes on the proposed constitution in the last meeting for it to be approved to go to the student body. And the reason I did that is because I think it should be up to students. And so there are aspects of the new proposed constitution that I fully agree with, such as having senators elected. I do not think it should be up to my role to decide an entire legislative body in its involvement in participants. And so I would say I'm going to vote yes. Proposed constitution.
Another question here from a senior here at Boise State is, given that you want to focus on accessibility for students facing financial hardships, what is your opinion regarding the increase in student financial hardship fund?
Student financial hardship fund?
Yes, that is part by the new students.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think, what is my opinion on it?
Yeah. And
I think it's a great resource. Actually, in my role as student caller at the Alumni and Friends Center, we work really hard to increase donations to this fund. And from what I've heard from the staff at the Dean of Students office, it has helped a lot of people. And I think that whatever we can do to increase funding towards that would be great. I know we just recently passed a bill in the ASBSU as well for that. So.
Thank you. Another question from a senior is, what is your strategic plan to engage with students on campus so you can understand the needs of the students?
I've had ideas. I think one idea would be between faculty and student relationships. I have an idea to have the faculty senate and the academic senate maybe have a mixer to get to know each other's system of governance and what we can do to help everybody all around. As far as helping students is in another sense, I would say it sounds simple, but tabling and creating maybe social media platforms for them to reach out to me, just making sure people know that I exist and I'm here to be a voice for them.
Thank you. That concludes the questions from the audience for now. So you can give your closing statement.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I would say I am really passionate about this role as AVP of Academic Affairs. I really appreciated the last year and all the work that I've done and all the people that I've met, and I look forward to another year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Calista. So that will conclude the debate for the Associate Vice President of Academic Affairs. Up next, we have the debate for the Associate Vice President of Inclusive Excellence. So this race is also currently unopposed. The candidate for this race is currently unopposed, and that is Diego Tapia. So,
Good afternoon.
So the candidate, this debate will follow the same rules, so you can go and get started with your 2-minute introduction.
All right, well, hello, everybody. My name is Diego Tapia. I am a first year here at Boise State University. I currently serve as an assembly representative for Inclusive Excellence in the General Assembly. I am also very heavily involved in Trio Club, where I work as head of marketing and promotions. And yeah, I just decided to run for this position because I am truly inspired by the work that have been done by the people in this position before, well, hopefully to be me. And I just want to continue the legacy work that has been brought forth and that has been pushed through these past couple of years. Yeah, there we are.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Diego. So, as I said before, you will now have a minute 30 questions from the panelists and from the audience as well, respectively. So the panelists for this debate will be Nathan Wong. He is a member of the ASBSU Elections Committee and a member of the ASBSU General Assembly as well.
How will you incentivize students to participate in ASBSU activities?
I think one of the ways, I'm sorry, you're talking about my thing on elections information as well. I think one of the ways that we can incentivize students to come to ASB or to participate in the ASBSU activities is by educating them on the endless opportunities that we offer to students, whether that be through the funding board, whether that be through actually applying to positions and working on behalf of making sure student life here at Boise State University is better and better engagement and everything. I want to get rid of the stigma, or not the stigma. I just want to get rid of being stingy on our money. Though, yes, I believe that we should spend student dollar fees carefully and not just waste them. I think a big thing that we do not talk about is how we're just allocating a big budget that is being unused. That is student dollars that are paid to the university to go to us, that are just being unused. Students who pay those fees never see them by the time they get out. So I think that's another thing that I would like, that's another venue, or that's something that I would like to use to be able to further incentivize students by food, giving merch, giving sort of incentives that make students come and participate in Boise State University. Thanks.
Thank you for that answer, very interesting. What are a couple of ways in which you want to use these additional funds?
I think I kind of answered that in the previous question, but just I feel like being able to make more events where we can be able to put forth in there the education, participation, and interaction with our students. And again, food, merch, whatever means necessary. I just really want to make sure that students are aware of even what ASBSU is. And yeah, there we go.
Right, a similar question, a little more targeted. You stated you wanted ASBSU to fund events that promote diversity across campus. What are some events or programs here?
So I actually came up with the idea while throughout this campaign. I want to promote, I want to create a sort of involvement fair, but for clubs and organizations that not only push for but provide community for students who don't usually find community at Boise State University. That would be language clubs, that would be what's like that promote just community and are community oriented. Also celebrations of ethnic and cultural events and promoting that by ASBSU or inviting or possibly even funding them from it. And working with students or clubs and organizations to create it.
Briefly, before we continue with the questions, can you make sure you hold the microphone close so that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
The Associated Vice President of Inclusive Excellence appoints members to the Inclusive Excellence Student Council in conjunction with the President. What are some of the qualifications you would prioritize when looking at it?
I think some of the qualifications that I would prioritize while looking for people to be in the Inclusive Excellence Student Council is someone who is empathetic, someone who is understanding. Though, yes, I myself have experiences and have identities that shape how I view life. I really want to hone in on being able to understand how the Inclusive Excellence Student Council can best serve to the benefit of all students, whether that be through them being a part of a minority or a majority group. I want to create a council that is able to understand how to look at opposing viewpoints as well, and how to better fuel their positioning through them.
Thank you. We will go ahead and now transition to questions from the audience. I have a couple of questions here. However, again, you'll have to QR code, so feel more than free to submit questions that we go. So the first question is from a senior here at Boise State. The question goes, how will you respond and continue to support all students when navigating through combative opinions and legislation in ASBSU?
Can you repeat the question, sir?
Yeah, of course. So again, the question is from a senior, and the question goes, how will you respond and continue to support all students when navigating through combative opinions and legislation in ASBSU?
I think the biggest thing, again, holding back into that sense of being able to create a safe space for all students, being able to show that, again, there are combative opinions in ASBSU. We've seen that especially this year. I want to ensure that students are aware and know that there are places for you here at Boise State University, and that there are safe spaces you can go to release your frustration or to even talk about and connect with other students here on campus as well.
Thank you. This question has two different pieces to it. So what is your current stance on the Constitution that has been proposed for the vote that will be taking place next week? And if it was to pass, how would you plan on continue to promote diversity and inclusivity for ASBSU and navigating a new constitution?
As a member that was a part of, as a delegate that was a part of the Constitutional Convention, I've seen a lot of the lack of transparency, lack of accessibility that there has been in relation to the information, even getting the word out to students that a Constitutional Convention was even happening. My position on the Constitution, I don't like it. And not only do I not like it, students do not like it. Students have in conjunction with the IASC, have hosted 4 town hall events and have attended 2 town hall events and 2 debate formats of the Constitution Convention, where an overwhelming amount of students have voiced their concerns, their disagreements, and they're wanting of there to be more transparency and accessibility throughout this entire process. So I am completely against this proposed constitution. How will I ensure that there is more diversity, equity, and inclusion in ASBSU if this were to be proposed? Again, creating that safe space, creating that community. I would also, as Vice President of Inclusive Excellence, push that we in some way, shape, or form bring back the IASC and students who are able to fight for diversity.
Thank you. That will be concluding the questions from the audience. So you now have a minute to give your closing remarks.
And so yeah, I honestly just want to increase student participation, interaction, and education. That is at the basis of my entire campaign. It is something that I think ASBSU has lacked for this past couple of years, and I want to bring that to the center of the table and see how we can best serve all students, not just some students. Also, don't know for the Constitution. Little fun.
Thank you, Diego. Yeah. Awesome, so, okay. So up next, we have the Associate Vice President, Student Organizational Affairs position. This position currently has 3 candidates, and for the following, debates, meaning this debate and the presidential debate later on, we will have Kieran Willett from the Arbiter joining the panel as well to ask questions. Again, I encourage all of you here in the audience and on Zoom to please submit questions through the form that is out in the seats and that is in the comment section of Zoom, so that I can ask those questions to the candidates as well. So the candidates for this debate are Joe Engstrom, Paul Masad, and Ian Peña. So if you could please come up here. As mentioned previously, I've met with the candidates and gone over the rules with them as well, and we have also done a drawing to see in which order the candidates will be introducing themselves, answering questions, and providing their closing statements. So for the order, we will start with Ian, we will then go to Paul, and then we will finish with Joe for this debate. So if we could go ahead and Ian, if you could start with your introduction statement.
Perfect. All right, thank you, Angel. It's been really awesome, this whole election process here. I am a newcomer to student government. That is one of the ways that I am an outlier to the rest of the candidates. And I have seen, first off, fantastic work, like I wanted to say, from our election manager and everyone associated in making this all come together. My campaign platform has been built by my constituents through a series of meetings that I've had with them. I did not figure out what I wanted to do and then go to meetings and try and convince them that it was the best. I asked them what they wanted to see. In these meetings, I heard repeated feedback about a lack of transparency and communication. I heard feedback about frustrations with the financial grant application system for student organizations. And I heard lots of support for the suggestion of, like Diego said earlier, a student community, some way for a community to be built by student government of organizations, where organizations are able to speak with one another and are able to know one another and rely on one another and help when they are going through similar challenges. Say, you've been through a problem before, I can help with that. I did that. That's been my platform. I am an engineer, and so I'm a natural born problem solver. I like to look at things from all sides, and I like to combine multiple viewpoints into a final product. So I think that's not for an opening statement.
Thank you. That's Paul. Yeah, for yours.
All right, hello guys, my name is Paul Masad. I'm a freshman here at Boise State University, and this is actually my first semester in ASBSU. And the way I kind of put together my campaign was I actually am a club leader of my own club called Student Young Adults Group on campus. And I've been speaking with other group leaders, and I started to understand what their frustrations were. Some of us what Ian found out. I mean, just me, that's similar thing. So I have an open door concept, my first thing, and this is the idea of building relationships and having conversations with each other, and that's how I believe we make change. And then my second one is advocating for students, right? As a club leader myself, I understand what it's like. I understand the confusion or like the lack of communication between these clubs on campuses and then funding board, right? It's I didn't even know that I had access to the funding board until I started digging deeper into this position and wanting to run for it. Oh, well, there's access. So advocating for students like that, and then this ties right along with my support and inform ideas, right? Support and inform students on what the funding board has to offer them. I should be a resource for you. You should be able to talk to me and speak with me to figure out the issue there. So I've been huge on that. I've been giving you my number, like shoot me a text if you have any questions, right? And trying to build that kind of more connection, which also has got kind of opened up the concept of communication. And yeah, I feel like I can do these things because even just last year, with the all student body president at my school, I represented about 2,300 kids. I had access to all our funds that they allocated to the different clubs or organizations at my school. And I feel like, yeah, 2,300 kids, it's down here, but I feel like I'm able to scale that up to, Boise State, 25,000 kids. I just have to be able to scale that from right here to here. So I feel like my previous experience with this will allow me to be successful in the position. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Inkster. Basically, I'm running to seek an increase of budget. I also want to pursue reformation on funding caps from 4,000 to 6,000 and also personal grants from 400 to 600. This will enhance student life and representation within ASBSU. And I also want to promote organizations on campus. All of this can be done, and this is the basis that I'm running off of. All of this can be done through establishing contracts between clubs and organizations. So basically, for example, say Club A has this amount of funding and Club B needs this amount of funding. Club B is going to use all the $6,000. Club A is not going to use even $4,000. They could create contracts between those two clubs where Club A can allocate all that or funding to Club B, and that would create an increased partnership, communication, and representation in ASBSU. I also want to make it a lot easier for clubs to get funding for, small financing abilities or, small financial things such as like pizza parties or something. I think that you should be able to do it through Engage or like a Google form or something else that basically when it's sent in, it would go straight to me. I would send it to the people like John Hand or Terry Rapp. They would approve it within minutes or hours, and then that way you don't have to wait weeks or even months to just get financed for a pizza party. Also, one thing that I also want to kind of promote a lot is just when someone sends in a funding opportunity, say like the art club sends in a funding opportunity, and they want us to fund a art show. I would like to refer them to other artists or professors that can help either, boost their platform and also just give a lot of photo opportunities through like the communications officer or other photo opportunities. And I think my candidates over here, particular ones, also agree with this.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you all. Yeah, so the candidates will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer questions, and there will also be rebuttals if their campaign or names are mentioned throughout the debate as well. So the first question will be for Ian from Dryden. Or Karen, sorry.
Okay, so what other clubs and programs do you plan on supporting besides the migration research?
Yeah, so obviously I'm a member of the microgravity research team. They have my support, but they've been lucky enough to get support from the Idaho Space Grant Consortium, so they don't particularly need ASBSU support. The clubs I've talked to that really do need some support are the Mechanical Engineering Club was one that tried to get and failed to get financial support from ASBSU this last year. There are many other organizations for recreation, Dungeons and Broncos, Anime Club, things along those lines that need support. Additionally, it sounds like Greek life on campus has virtually had no relationship with student government, what I've heard from several Greek life presidents in my time talking with them. And I'd really like to see that relationship rebuilt to see what we can do for them. Because right now we can't begin to do anything for them as we don't even know what they need, what we can give them. So reestablishing that connection and ensuring that we take advantage of it to provide resources, whether that be fiscal or otherwise, to ensure that these organization leaders have the resources that they need in order to not just succeed and get the job done, but to really make their vision of the club, organization, group, team, whatever it is, come to fruition in a way that's meaningful and that helps students beyond the university.
Yes.
You said you plan to ensure that the funds for clubs are allocated fairly and effectively. How are you determining what is fair and effective?
Well, I mean, the way I would determine this is simply, I mean, it sounds pretty simple, but need. It's why does this club need this over this club? Has this club been overrepresented compare to this club, I'll compare those things and kind of pretty much come to a determination, and also with support of my officers that help out with this position, you take their opinions on it, like, okay, where do you guys think that this club A asked for this, Club B asked for this, Club B has this much funding, and Club A doesn't have that much, so like kind of pretty much determining need and where the fund should be allocated. I mean, that's not simple, but yeah.
How do you plan to enhance club representation?
Thank you for your question. I think one thing that we do lack is communication and transparency. A lot of people, or a lot of clubs and organizations don't even know where to get funding, right? What I want to do is just send out semester check-ins, but also ensure that I'm able to send out constant emails saying, hey, these are funding opportunities, these can benefit your club. And with that, I think that you could really enhance club representation on campus. You can promote clubs on campus, you can promote their platform, you could get their word out, and you could get their message out and what they stand for and what they do for the university.
How will you provide equitable support to student organizations on
Equitable, equitable support in the sense of ensuring that all clubs are receiving similar support, that's fair. Yeah, so right now, a lot of the clubs aren't receiving support at all. So I haven't had a whole lot of time to talk about how we can ensure that they're getting equitable support. My campaign time and my mindset time has really been focused on reestablishing that they're getting that support in the first place, but that's the next natural question. Once we've established that, how do we make sure that we are fairly representing this? You can look to federal legislation and state legislation for inspiration for this. The 1964 Civil Rights Act and all of its amended versions include language that prevents discrimination in settings against race, ethnicity, political views, beliefs, etc. And we can include similar wording in legislation regarding how we fund clubs and organizations to ensure that we are funding them not based on whether or not they align with our own personal demographics and political views, but on need and how they plan to use that. I think that if one club is planning to have a pizza party and another club needs money to get the materials for the device that they're building, one of those two things does happen to be more important than the other, and we should prioritize based on that. At the same time, we can't just pick and choose who we like and decide to give out funds accordingly.
How do you plan to build relationships with on-campus communities?
Thank you for the question. Similar to what Joe said, that it's like quarterly and semesterly check-ins, right? And with the initial check-in after the beginning of the year, I'd like to give the club's presidents or leaders or different people in that group my phone number, my emails, things like that, just to communicate with me just right off the bat. And also just have these quarterly checkups every like month or two, and reach out to the clubs to see what they need, to see what they're maybe confused on. And I feel like I can do this with my open door policy of, you know, conversations and access to me via Zoom, email, text, whatever it may be. I believe that will allow me to do that. And with these quarterly check-ins, I can stay up to date on what these clubs actually need. I mean, we have on Engage, it's like 308 clubs registered. We have all these clubs, and a lot of them do need funding and are maybe confused or lost. Not feel like me checking with them and then having open access to me via phone number, which is similar to email, will help me do this.
Joe, you mentioned briefly about 30-second rebuttal based on panel communication.
I've seen some. Well, yeah, no, he just agreed with me. So.
Okay.
How do you plan on strengthening communication between ASBSU and other student organizations?
Well, thank you for the question again. Something that I, said earlier, you need to reach out to clubs. You need to tell them about funding opportunities. You need to tell them about how I can promote your platform, get your word out. And this can all be done through, constant communication with clubs and organizations on campus. A lot of clubs some clubs actually just don't even know how to go and access funding in the first place. If elected, I would reach out to clubs and I would say, hey, This is a funding opportunity. This is your budget. This is something that I really feel like can promote your platform in BSU and get more people to join you and increase student life. I mean, something that we pride ourselves on is, student engagement and student life, and we need to fund student engagement and student life so we can do that.
This would be your first role in student government. How do you foresee this being an advantage or disadvantage in your position?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both, right? I don't have the context innately. I do not have a year of having been in student government, having seen the problems, having seen the processes for myself. But that's forced me to work a lot harder to get that. Just before this, I was in a meeting with IESC, asking about the founding of their club, asking about what they've done since, asking for context as to how they work, who they prioritize, and how the Constitutional Convention has affected them. And I, as far as I know, am the only candidate to have done this. I've done similar things with other student organizations. I've made sure that I'm equitably reaching out to different people. And because of that, I've been forced to do my homework and am now in a position where I'm armed with the knowledge of the past from all of these different perspectives, rather than being limited to the one perspective of someone sitting down in office. I've noticed on the topic of communication and transparency that a lot of our a lot of candidates or student government members in general are supporting the Constitution to abolish IESC. And I think that they, through the nature of having been on the student government, do not understand just how little the student body has heard about that. And I think that's just one of the many examples of how being a student allows me to understand the students better, as opposed to having been one of the government representatives.
Oh, do you support raising or lowering one of the grants maximums?
I mean, obviously, I'm gonna say I would support raising them, but as of right now, raising them, yes, that's good, but my first plan of action would simply be just, I want to make it easier, like the application process, it can be confusing. I want to make that easy. That's my first plan is to just simplify that and have these clubs actually have access and use these grants. And then once they start using it, if I see a need for, okay, we need more money, we need to raise the direct fund, we need to raise the individual fund, things like that, whatever it may be, I would be 100% open to raising that. But I think initially we need to work on actually having access to these things and making it simpler, right? And making clubs actually know about what the funding board has to offer them. I mean, I had my own club, I didn't even know that I could access money. So first plan would just be letting people know about this, and then eventually, once I see the need for it, 100% raise all the different individual, direct, and joint funds.
It's a similar question for you, Joe. We know already that you do support raising the funds. How exactly would you go about that process? And,
Well, this is a very good question. So what we have in the ASBSU right now is a contingency budget. That's all the money left over. And we have a very big surplus of money in the contingency budget. What we can do is we can actually allocate that money to funding board. Something that happens with funding board a lot is we know we're supporting clubs because they run out of money. I mean, just last week or last joint meeting, they requested another $20,000, and this was not the only time they've done that. They are very constrained to a budget as it is, and that is why we should fund it. And we can do this with the surplus of money that we already have that we will not spend.
Okay, we will go ahead and transition to questions from the audience now. The first question, and this is a question for all candidates. So if clubs happen to have disputes between each other or just have a problem in general, what would be the process to resolve them in this position?
Disputes between clubs. Yeah, no, that actually hasn't been suggested to me. I haven't thought about that. So disputes between clubs are something that obviously can happen. And I talked a little bit about equitability earlier and making sure that we're treating clubs fairly. Similar measures can be applied to club disputes. We already have a lot of resources on campus for conflict management, such as the Conflict Management Center. So we have a lot of very qualified people who we could ask for advice, reach out and say, hey, what can we do in this Congress or in this situation to ensure that these clubs are being able to equitably and fairly voice their disagreements with each other without creating a counterproductive situation. As for a specific plan, I don't have one yet. I haven't seen any club disputes so far. I've really seen that our club communities don't interact hardly at all. But with my goal to build a community and to have clubs start interacting with one another, I think it is a big deal to make sure that they are getting along. We are serving as a mediator, and that student government provides a safe place for club leaders to speak with each other openly and freely without fear of being reprimanded for the views that they express or fearing that they won't be able to express all the views they want to.
You might repeat the question one more time, please.
Yeah, of course. So if clubs happen to have disputes between each other or just having problems in general, what would be the process to resolve them?
Well, similar to what Ian said, I don't know that I haven't heard with the people I've met with that that's been an issue, but if that were to be an issue, then we have resources on campus, as Ian said, again, but simply it's like, okay, we're adults, sitting down, let's figure this out, right? This is not high school, but we can figure this out, and just sit them down, figure out what the issue is, and I think disagreement is okay. Disagreement and conflict and opinions is okay. I feel they can disagree, but you have to have respect for one another, right? And just because I disagree with you does not mean we're not going to be respectful of one another. So figure that out and figure out bridge that gap between disagreement and disrespect, right? So we can disagree, but also be respectful. So just kind of having a nice balance of that.
I mean, what my two opponents said, I completely agree with that. Like Paul said, we are adults, we should be able to sit down, have a meeting. But also, I think that you could expand that and you could say, you know, like the tennis club and the volleyball club, they're having disagreements. Well, you can create a day where it's just like, you know, a club day or a sports day. That way, those two clubs can come together, they can join as one, they can merge their funds in order to do that on campus and promote both of their platforms, as well as just come together and be Broncos.
Thank you. Another question for all three candidates. What is your stance on the new proposed constitution?
The new proposed constitution obviously abolishes IASC, hurting minority representation and opening the door to possible disenfranchisement in the future. However, I do support the motions to make the seats in the Assembly and the Senate elected positions. I think the Executive Council has a disparate amount of power compared to the other branches by being able to appoint those positions, and I would like to see those elected in the future. However, the biggest frustration that I have is the lack of communication to the student body on behalf of ASBSU regarding the Constitution. It was, in fact, I think that the Arbiter's article posted yesterday provided more access to information about what the Constitution did. And this is according to the people who I sent the Arbiter link to, the student organization leaders who I had already met, not me. And because of that lack of communication, on principle, you should not vote for an enormous governmental change that you are not informed about. To pull a term from a social psychology setting, we have not been provided with informed consent. And for that reason, I will be voting no, and I advise that the rest of you vote no. We can come back to this idea later. Changes do need to be made to the government. I personally support the IESC and what it does, but we can have a more detailed conversation about that together in the future.
Personally, I don't really have a set opinion on the new constitution, just because, I mean, I'm becoming more aware of the ins and outs of it, but I do know that in most student governments in the United States, and looking at our government in general, it's a 3-branch system, and we have a 5-branch system currently. So, I mean, I do understand where they come from. As I'll be open to the 3-branch system 100%, as long as these people are still being represented, and the 2 branches are still being represented fairly, and that there's no lack of that when it comes to representation. I still believe that's super important, and I do see why. I mean, for me coming to the ASBSU, I'm like, oh, 5 branches. It was confusing for me even. I mean, I know I'm new to it, but it was still confusing because from the student governments I know it's 3 branches. So as long as it's, all those ones being cut are not being misrepresented anymore or not being represented at all, I'd be open to it. And also, I believe it should be like up to the students. If the students are aware of what the Constitution actually says, they should vote. But I can definitely see how it can be dangerous when there's a lack of understanding about the new Constitution within. So I can see both sides of it, but I understand the three branch system. Thank you.
I will be completely honest with you. My first meeting with the Academic Senate, I had conducted a survey on behalf, I'm an academic senator for the School of Public Service. I conducted a survey on behalf of the School of Public Service, and by a very thin margin, they voted to pass a constitution, and my vote reflected that in the Academic Senate. Do I agree with the new proposed constitution? I do not. However, that just shows that I'm willing to represent the majority. However, I also think that it lacked transparency, it lacked communication, and it lacks representation. I can tell you right now that the majority of students probably don't want it. It was never communicated to the students. One of the survey questions that I had asked was, how aware are you of the new proposed constitution? On a scale from 1 to 10, not a single person scored above a 5. That shows that we lack communication, that we lack transparency. And quite frankly, I feel like it's rushed. And quite frankly, it was so rushed, and votes are needed that they're willing to put it on this ballot in order to maximize the votes because they knew that it would never pass in a special election.
Thank you. You all seem to run on very similar platforms. What differentiates yourself from the other candidates?
I think what differentiates me from the other candidates is, first off, initially I had focused on what can I do for clubs, what can I do for organizations, and I still have that focus, obviously, you heard in my platform. But in talking with these clubs and organizations, they seem to have the same worries that the rest of the student body does. Again, on that communication and transparency piece, you can't beat this horse dead enough right now. The lack of communication from ASBSU has been negligent at best, and an active attempt is to silence student voices at worst. This is completely unacceptable, and I have gone out and talked directly or indirectly with over 1,000 constituents to see what they think can be done with this. Most of these meetings were done through meeting with presidents and then having them serve as representatives for their clubs. And because of that, I was able to reach a very large audience. And I think that a willingness to practice what I preach, just looking on my Instagram, you can see that I have been sharing who I've been reaching out to. I've been sharing my platform. I've been updating. I've been admitting when I'm wrong. I am not a prideful person, and I would like to bring a little bit less pride into ASBSU and a little bit more dedication to doing the right thing.
You might read the question, please.
Of course, you seem to all run on similar platforms. What differentiates yourself from the other candidates?
Thank you. For me personally, I mean, me, Joe, have been in student government first semester, correct? Second semester. So we're fairly new to it. I know Ian hasn't been in student government yet, but I feel what differentiates me from Joe and Ian is my previous experience as ultimate vice president of my school. I don't believe that either candidate could argue that they represented 2,300 kids and voiced these kids' concerns to the superintendent of school district, for example. I was able to meet with Dr. Bug and speak with him about things that students are experiencing and maybe some changes that should be made or the simple suggestions that I've received. I was able to voice those, so representing 2,300 kids, I feel like it's something that really makes me stand out compared to my opponents. Also, I had direct access to our fund, our student council fund. And by the time me entering my presidency to me leaving it, I had over doubled the fund. And that is because I was able to reach out to local businesses or credit unions like ICCU and receive sponsorships from them for shirts, different events, things like that. So I believe that this makes me stand out. I have experience with money and allocating those funds to different clubs. Like, for example, I allocated funds to Source Strength, which is a mental health awareness club that was at Mountain View High School. So I feel like this makes me, just a little bit more than my opponents. Thank you. I mean, I would have to disagree with my opponent Paul here. Yes, you were
president of your student body, I was the head of campus ministry in my high school, and I also served on the student council, and I was also part of Falcon Force, which is our pep rally. I know about leadership, I know how to get things done, and I know how to represent students, and quite frankly, as an academic senator, I actually went back home on spring break, and on the Monday of spring break, when it started, I went to my high school to try to be an ambassador for the School of Public Service and try to recruit kids for them. I am dedicated to expanding the population of the school to represent all students, as well as I have also had past experience. This past year, I've worked with the Frank Church Institute, and I was the assistant director for the high school model UN program. We had a budget at the beginning of the year. I was in charge of travel. I had to buy 65 plane tickets. I had to buy 55 hotel rooms, all for 218 students. It was, and being constrained to a budget, you don't think that it's going to be possible. Well, it was possible, and it was such a success that we were actually renewed until 2028.
Good, yeah, you were mentioning, in both, so you get 30
Yeah.
seconds.
I wanted to issue a rebuttal to Paul's claim that I have not represented a large group of students before. I actually work as the Idaho Science and Aerospace Scholars Program Student Assistant, representing as an alumni of the program, 200 students a year for over a decade, the Department of Education. I have lobbied to the state legislature on behalf of them and have worked with names like Barbara Morgan and Steve Swanson, famous astronauts across the nation, to help bring the program to rural parts of the state of Idaho, and have represented them for a very long time doing that.
All of them love to reply to this.
Yeah, just the rebuttal. Yes, you guys advocated for people and a large group of people, but I was just saying 2,300 because I was just putting out a number. So yeah, I'm not saying, I guess I could rephrase that. You guys did advocate for people, but I was saying I've advocated for over 2,000 kids. So yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Joe.
Sorry, I would also like to rebuttal that rebuttal. So 2,300 students, yes, I'm not going to want to your school population, minus 2,500, like I said. I was the head of campus ministry. I'm not going to be petty, I wanted to get back right.
Are the facts right?
Thank you. Regarding the proposed constitution, which to provide clarification on comments made previously, the assembly would still be appointed under this proposed constitution. However, the question is by a junior, and the question goes, what are your thoughts about the proposed constitution in regards to the funding board changes being made specifically?
I am woefully unfamiliar with the changes that would be made to the funding board. The earliest I was able to see a full text of the Constitution was when I came home from speaking with constituents at about 10:30 last night, took a shower, 11:30, updated the Instagram, the campaign, midnight, and then I saw that the Arbiter's article contained it. At that point, I had other things to do, and I haven't been able to see the specific funding board changes that would be made, which I am very disappointed in. Had I been aware of the full text being available earlier, I would have very much liked to prioritize seeing that as chair of the funding board. Sorry, not current chair of funding board, but running for a position which chairs the funding board. That is absolutely something that I should know, and the soonest opportunity that I have to be familiar with it, which should be after this debate, I plan to sit down and do a detailed read of the full text of the proposed constitution.
I'm similar. I'm also not fully aware, but I know that whatever change does come, I'll still be able to advocate for students and be a voice for them. And I'm not acting, I know everything about it, but I know that in my mind that whatever does happen, I can still represent students and communicate with clubs and help with funds and simplify the application form and increase funds eventually. So yes, thank you. I know that the student proposed constitution is both going to dissolve the funding board and dissolve the IESC, which are two prominent branches on the constitution or in our branch of government. I mean, you know, it's supposed to be modeled after the free branch system of the United States of America. We are not the United States of America. We are Boise State student government. We should not try to model something, you know, that's the pinnacle of everything. We can be different. We want to be different. We should be different. Quite frankly, I am very glad that we are having this debate, but At the same time, all our positions are on the line. And whether or not we are elected by the student body on the day of election and then the Constitution passes, the people who voted to represent us, to advocate for their concerns and to advocate for clubs and organizations on campus, they will not have that same representation because our grievances will be resolved.
Thank you, and that will conclude the debate for this position, so thank you all for coming. We are going to take a quick 3-minute break, so you can go back, and then we chat. Okay, so this will be the final debate of the day. This will be the president and vice president debate. All tickets present with both the president and the vice president candidates. The choice of who will speak, president or vice president, will be made by the candidates themselves. And this position has 3 tickets: the Jay Sheen and Jason Holman ticket. We have Abby Smith and Sarah Katrinoff, and we'll have Isaac Sullivan and Zach Yersick. Sorry. The candidates met before the debate to determine the order in which they will go, and we will begin with 2-minute introduction speeches by each ticket, beginning with Isaac and Zach.
Thank you, Angel. Well, hello everyone, my name is Isaac Sullivan. I'm currently running for student body president.
My name is Zachary Torsick, and I'm running for vice president of ASBSU.
And we're running on 3 things. So we're running on involvement, parking, action. Good way to remember is IPA. But for the involvement part, I think, I started in September. I'm a first-year student, but since my first year, I've gotten really involved with parking, passing legislation totaling up to $61,000 in total passed. But the thing that I've noticed with meeting with clubs is streamlining efforts to promote such clubs, from club sports to Greek life to any club on campus. I think there needs to be more recognition, not on our social media and theirs, but also on the Boise State University social medias as well as providing more club funding and representation in the ASBSU. For parking, it is a very tricky one, but the best that we can do is a parking assistance program. We want to partner with either Uber or Lyft, depending on contracts. And we also want to work with the Cycle Learning Center to provide bikes for students who can't afford it due to financial struggles as well. That's kind of the best we want to do. We want to also advocate for easier parking, more efficient parking. And then for action piece, one thing that we also want to do is a university-wide mentorship program. So in a nutshell, basically whatever field of work you want to do, you get a mentor for your mentee and work on this to get 1 credit over a year, less time consuming than an internship, as well as taking action on mental health. I've passed about $4,000 for suicide prevention, and yeah.
We want to be transparent. We want to be people that you can trust, you can talk to, you can email, you can call, you can set up meetings with. We want to represent the students because that is our job. We don't want to be isolated. We want to be unified, because at the end of the day, we're supposed to represent all of you, not just some minute part. Thank you.
Next, we have Jay and Jason.
Hi, I'm Che,
My name is Jason.
and we are running for ASBSU president and vice president. And so I think it's pretty clear that not a lot of people actually know what ASBSU is, right? And so that's the entire reason why we're running, is for increased transparency and outreach, because every single student should know the opportunities and resources they have at Boise State University. And so we want to make sure that we create a community at Boise State University where every student can thrive. And so that's full access to mental health resources. That's full access to things that excite you and bring you to campus. And so if you want to participate in Dungeons and Broncos, then we're going to give you $4,000. We're going to make sure the process is simpler, it's more accessible, you know how to get the money, and we check up on you every semester. And then we all get sad, it happens, and if we need that extra help, then when you go to University Health Services, we want to make sure that you feel comfortable going, you know the process of what's going to happen, and you know the exact cost. And so overall, I've participated in student government since I was a freshman. I've been previous chief of staff, government relations officer, and sustainability chair. And Jason has not participated in student government, but has held multiple leadership positions across campus. And I think the biggest thing that sets us apart from the other candidates is that we've worked with university officials on every single level to push many different kinds of initiatives. And we're very familiar with the Boise State community. We've been here since we're freshmen. Yeah. Yeah, talk to you.
Could you hold the timer with that? 30 seconds. As a club president and a member of multiple different clubs, I understand how difficult it can be to gain funding and to get support for your club. So one of the promises that I will personally make, regardless of the election outcome, is to help and support clubs with Engage and all the forms and funding work. So if you need help, I kind of like helping student involvement. So help to do that, to support students.
That's time. So, thank you, Abby and Sarah.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Abby Smith, and I'm a junior here at BSU. The Smith-Kazarnoff ticket has 4 goals: parking, student outreach, student club funding, and student meal plan systems. As you can kind of tell, these are similar to other things that candidates are also running on, but we have something that sets us apart, and that is my experience in student government. I am currently on the ASBSU Executive Council as the Chief of Staff. In this position, I am the Chief Financial Officer of ASBSU, as well as the Vice Chair of the Student Funding Board. Over the past year, I've had the opportunity to fund more than 80 clubs across this campus, as well as passing and helping put into action all the bills passed by the ASBSU legislature. I also am a transfer student, transferred from Treasure Valley Community College, where I served as the 59th student body president. I'm excited to bring that experience and my experience in the ASBSU Executive Council to the ASBSU presidency.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Kazarnoff, and I'm a junior in the Boise State Nursing Program. And I also serve as a commuter representative in ASBSU. In that position, I've been able to participate in assembly meetings, draft legislation, and collaborate with some of the other assembly and senate members there. One of the things that sets us apart is that I'm the only vice presidential candidate to be a part of ASBSU. And as far as I know, I'm the only VP candidate that has been to a student assembly meeting. And this experience is crucial because one of the main roles as the vice president of Boise State is to chair those student assembly meetings.
Thank you. Awesome. Okay, so as previously, the candidates have met before the debate to determine the order in which they will go and have gone over the rules as well. Candidates will have 2 minutes to answer the questions, and if their name or campaign is brought up or referenced by other candidates, they will have a 45-second rebuttal. The first question will be for the ISIC and SAC ticket by Brown and Black.
How are you planning to support and uplift student organizations?
Thank you for that question. How we're planning to uplift student organizations, I've since September, call me ambitious, but I've met with as many department administrators as possible, even understanding how the executive fee and student committee works, as well as how SafeFab and student fee money is appropriated in helping student clubs, as well as outreach as well. One thing particular helping student clubs and students, right? Yeah, is promotion. Getting their name out there. We've talked to so many club sports where no one even knows about them, such as like a hockey club, and or a ultimate frisbee club. Like just promoting them and putting them on social media, not on ours, but also working with student marketing, which can control those bigger pages to promote such events as well as them, and even working with them again, like we've said, we want to be a partnership between the student government and every single student in club on campus, like a friend. Not friends where we have to go to the movies together, but friends where you can always text us, email us, and always ask us any questions to help support you.
Oh, so looking sorry.
Oh,
My apologies.
Same question. How are you planning to support and uplift student organizations?
The biggest thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna go to students and student clubs. And so there should be semester or yearly check-ins for every single club that we provide funding for. It's like an investment on your money, right? If you give a club $4,000, you should see where it's ending up. And so if a club comes to us and they're like, hey, we want to do a pizza party, but we're gonna have this many students, okay? And then we can ask, hey, can we participate? What kind of club is it? Do you want us to invite our friends? Do you want us to help you promote it? We have a communications team. Do you want us to help you take pictures at your event so we can help you post your Instagram and boost it? And so these are some of the things where we can support student organizations. Another aspect of that is understanding that every student organization is different. And so some organizations may need more connections across campus that we can help provide. And some may need like ideas of, hey, this other club across campus is actually doing a similar square dancing thing in the quad. Do you want to partner with them? And then you can get a joint fund for up to $6,000 instead of $4,000. And so I think just being expert and knowing what we're doing and just constantly offering and going to the students is how we're going to help them.
Similarly, I like to attend as many club meetings as I possibly can to understand what clubs need and how we can best support them. One of the coolest ones I think we have is the Jedi Club. I don't think people know about that. And I don't think people know about a lot of things. I'm a club athlete. We struggle to get people to join because we cannot find people who are interested or even know that club sports exist other than maybe soccer and volleyball. With clubs, it's very hard for community outreach other than tabling and social media advertising. Advertising is difficult, I understand that. But helping clubs to meet each other and to support each other with similar interests, I think is very important.
And can you repeat the question real quick?
Yeah, it's how are you planning to support and uplift student organizations?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So, as I said in my introduction, I have been on the funding board this whole year. I have personally been through the struggles that clubs face every time they ask for funds. And actually in my position, I am the same. I ask for those funds for the student government itself. Can you repeat it one more time?
Yeah, how you're planning to support and uplift student organizations?
Yeah, so one of the things I'm running on is also increasing that student funding and also simplifying the process. Because a lot of times you don't know what you can change, and there are some things that can be changed about that process, but the university also has things that cannot be changed. And since I've been on the funding board this year, it's given me the opportunity to see what clubs have been funded, why they have been denied, and what can be changed to benefit them in the future so that they can be more involved and have those funds so that they can hold those events. Anything else, Sarah? All right, thank you.
All right, this is a little longer question. Keeping in mind that in conjunction with the current president and vice president, the incoming president and vice president will propose a budget to the legislative branch. What areas do you think ASBSU should increase funding for or cut funding for?
Wow, that's a really great question. Thank you. One thing that we would work on with, if we were elected with the current president and vice president, is hearing their perspective. They've been in this position for about a year. So I think their perspective is valuable, as well as even talking with the Assembly Senate members and the other two branches as well. I think that would be a good way to start. As well as, we'd have a meeting if elected, we would go overview what they also do a proposed, and we would co-jointly vote on it with the ASBSU Assembly and Senate. And so I think the most important thing for me especially is to understand their proposed budget, to see all perspectives of every single branch, and base it off that. The club funding we would increase. In terms of decreasing, we would have to want to hear perspectives if there was any proposed decreases in anything.
And again, as vice president, my job would be to reach out to all these clubs, Greek life, and see what their opinions are, make sure that they understand what's going on, and also being able to hear their opinions, the issues that they're running into, so I understand and can take that into consideration when we work on these. It is very crucial for us, and I will probably keep repeating this, but for them to understand that we are here for them, and we want to hear all the issues that they have, because As we talked with the hockey club, they did an amazing job of raising money for their philanthropy, and yet no one really knew about it. They only had, I think, like 1,800 followers, and yet these guys do a phenomenal job at what they do and the sport that they are playing at. I mean, I was part of fencing and no one knew about it, and it was one of the coolest things I've ever done. And I would love for this outreach and especially increasing the understanding of what they need and what they might need to be added to their funding. Thank you.
A quick follow-up on that question for you guys. Could you summarize maybe in a bullet point list, 3 to 4, specific things you would want to add to the budget that ASBSU funds or cut from the budget?
I think some things that, we would want to add for bullet points is probably, separate accounts for, promotional stuff. I think we need to promote ourselves, starting with the grassroots level of student government and promotional material. I know that's been discussed in some of our assembly and senate meetings. And probably, do a look at the increase of club funding, as well as, probably be looking at the, fun fact and actually get an attorney for ASBSU. So probably looking at that budget to either increase, depending on the use of that particular business. I think.
I actually requested from ASBSU if I could receive the budget for this past fiscal year, and I received no answer. And so I don't have access to the budget, but I have worked on the budget when I was the chief of staff. But that was a few years ago. But just like any business, when you look at the budget and you want to adjust it, you need to look at several fiscal years to see how you use the money, how that's been adjusted, and what bills and resolutions have we passed that are pulling from these budgets. And so because I asked ASBSU and was not receiving access to this, I can't speak much to it.
Nor can I think the difficulty with raising or lowering budget is that students are not requesting money from funding board because they do not know how, or it's too difficult. So I think once we have the information from past years and we can make the process easier, then we can adjust the budget. But at this time, I don't know what the budget is because it's not public knowledge.
And can you repeat your question once again?
Essentially, how you would address the budget, the income budget that you would handle, any increases or decreases?
Yeah, so in my position on ASBSU now as the chief of staff, I have a big part in the budget making and just tracking that, how much ASBSU is spending each year. One of the areas I would definitely increase, which I know is in conversation right now, is the club funding. There's also a reason it would be raised to 6,000 per club, and 600 per individual. There are policies that BSU has that you have to follow. And thankfully, I know these policies and I know how much we can raise, to help the student body get access to those funds. And it's not only about funding things, it's also about where is this funding going, especially as a student body. I think you guys want to know, what is the student government spending this money on if we are increasing budget areas? And I'm just going to give this to Sarah to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so as Abby mentioned earlier, we need to know where the funding is going. Earlier this year, I co-sponsored a resolution that allowed both the academic senate and the assembly members to see the budget every single time before making a vote or a decision where that money is going to be spent. Our administration would certainly support students having easy access to the budget.
Thank you.
How do you plan to address the issue of parking on campus?
Well, thank you for this question. So parking is probably the most complaints ASBSU gets, if not, as a community student representative, I get. So to put this in perspective, I know so students have asked me to do parking down. Can we get parking permits cut in half, or if not free? First of all, parking permits are free. It would be a complete disaster if anyone can park whatever. I think we can, that's kind of a unanimous agreement. But for a parking garage, so when I was part of the parking steering committee since October, I wanted to advocate for parking garage. So to put in perspective, Lincoln Garage is 1,351 stalls. build one stall of concrete, steel, labor, inflation, it's about $45,000 a stall. It will cost $60 million to build a whole new parking Lincoln garage. You could give every single 33,000 student $1,800 scholarship. You could build an entire Greek road. You could build a sub and an environmental research building for that money. So what we want to do is, like, again, the parking assistance program, the cycle learning center, partnering with the dean of students, and transportation and a parking scholarship, especially for those who financially need it. You know, students have to care about tuition, housing, and even working with the student emergency fund, which passed the bill at $40,000 into that fund, still help alleviate costs of parking, because we know it's a big issue. We do want to partner with Uber and Lyft to get student free rides, free discounts, but yeah.
Thank you for those numbers, Isaac. I'm actually a civil engineer, so I design parking lots for a career. Parking is pretty complicated at Boise State University, but I'm going to target a few things that students have asked me to adjust about parking. One is for softball students, lacrosse students, rugby students who practice at the Cavern. A lot of them were told that if they bought a parking ticket on campus, somewhere on campus, it would also work for when they practice over there. However, they've been continuously getting parking tickets and they can't do anything about it. So they're either forced to buy 2 parking tickets or park at the university wherever they are, lug all their stuff over and practice for 2 hours. And so this is something that where student government can step in and say, hey, let me help you find this like partnership with parking services and advocate for you on your behalf, right? So we don't have $60 million. We can't always provide scholarships and give just money out for parking services because they have to make money too. But we can find these niche places where students actually need solutions. And that's what
I know.
And can you repeat the question one more time?
How would you address parking?
So that's an excellent question. If you visited our campaign website, we are the ones pushing for the starting and the negotiating planning of a parking garage. I hate telling students, this is all we can do. As a student government, it's our job to do what the students want, not what we think we can do with the time we've been given. I want to push for what the students want, and what I've heard a lot of feedback from isn't more parking, not Band-Aids to help people park in a place where parking isn't even available, but a whole new parking garage. In BSU's 2015 to 2025 campus master plan, there are 3 potential parking garages on campus that are not up right now. So I would push for the starting of the negotiating and the planning of a parking garage in one of those areas. Additionally, I don't know exactly where the numbers have been gotten from the other candidates. I was nowhere near 60 million. I know it's going to be a lot of money, but I'm willing to start that for the students and push it forward for the BSU student body. Furthermore, it's interesting that Isaac mentions the Uber Lyft situation because he wasn't in the meetings with public safety to discuss that. I was in those meetings. I met with Lindsay, the director of parking, and the AVP to discuss this. And so I have Lindsay's number in my wallet. Parking is a big issue. I'm ready to push for it for students, and I'm not going to say this is all we can do. Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you. I got these numbers from Lindsay Harkey herself, when we did discuss this $45,000 per stall, about 60 million to build an entire parking garage, just put it into perspective. I've worked with parking since September in the parking steering committee. One thing that we have proposed was a Bronco app in which she said she would bring up in her leadership meeting to where every student would have their ID number linked to what their parking permit is. And so when there's like football games, there's big events, or at the Morrison Center across campus, it would notify the students on their app and would highlight certain sections of the school to show them, hey, you can park here now. We have talked with Rec and the club sports person for free student ID numbers to be linked to club parking for club sports especially.
Do I get a rebuttal for that? Yeah, I'd love to. That lift conversation, that Uber conversation, I had it first with public safety. As I said, me and Ryan Bernard met with them about 2 months ago to discuss this. So when Isaac met with the parking individuals, he must have been getting what we already gained and talked about with parking. And again, I don't care if it's a lot of money, whatever the numbers he got versus what I got doing my own research, I am ready to do whatever the students want and to push for whatever they want. Thank you. I mentioned him again.
Yes, but we have to move on to a different topic.
What is your campaign's position on the constitutional referendum?
Thank you for this question. Our stance on this constitution is we are neutral. There is too much of just because I'm friends with this person, they're against it, I'm gonna vote for it. Just because I'm friends with this person, they're for it, I'm gonna vote for it. What needs to happen is students need to reach out to the authors of the constitution. Students need to reach out to the ISC to understand why it's concerning for them. My stance is, I agree with some of the constitution. I don't agree with a lot of it. But I don't feel like I should vote in favor or against it because it has good parts and bad parts. So therefore, you don't have to vote. Students don't have to vote yes or no on the constitution. If you feel like you don't know what to vote on, don't vote on it at all. That's kind of our stance, more of a neutral stance. There are bits and pieces that students have reached out to us to work on, that if this constitution were to pass, we would definitely work on, like the Greek affairs position that Greek Life has reached out to us about, as well as if it were to pass, we would again work with all sides of students to address the concerns that they have, as well as the underrepresentation. I myself am a minority, so I understand. I might have that perspective, as well as, you know, working with students is the biggest thing.
Our stance is we are not in support of the Constitution being changed. And when it comes to us or students reaching out to us, I think it should be the opposite. I think we should be actively reaching out to students to hear their voices. I hear a lot of people compare our student government to federal government. The purpose of student government is not to mimic the United States government, it is to support students. ASBSU is a tool to help students thrive at Boise State University. And I think to try to emulate something that we're not related to harms students in the long run.
This entire process of the Constitutional Convention has not been transparent and has not taken into account the voices of students. Both of us are super involved within the university, and we just found out by chance that the Constitution was changing. And when we were able to like share our input, it was not received. And so for us, it's not even about if there's some good parts and there's some bad parts, because that's going to be the same thing with anything that you pass. It's the fact that this entire thing wasn't transparent. There wasn't good leadership and making sure that every single student knew what was happening within ASBSU, which is supposed to represent you. And so therefore, we're 100% no against the changes.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
So I want to start off by saying student government should not be political. In my experience as being a student body president at a community college, the only time student government should be political is when the administration disagrees with the student body. Then it's the president's job to step in and say, hey, we don't agree with this and something needs to change. As for the Constitution and what's been going on the last 2 months, my vote is not going to change whether it's passed or not passed. What's more important as president, if elected, is my actions, whether it is passed or it isn't passed. If the new one is not passed, then I will do my best to serve the students in a way that I think fits the old Constitution to the best of my degree. And I know Sarah will do that as well. If the new one is passed, I will do my best to bring all voices to the table and to ensure representation when this new one becomes a reality. It does. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we will now transition into questions from the audience. So again, for those joining us on Zoom and those in person, there is a link in which you can submit questions, and I will be asking them for you. They're in the QR code and the flyers here in the room and in the comment section on the Zoom. The first question is for Isaac. So Question goes, ASBSU passed a resolution opposing a tuition increase that was made with no student input. You did not support this resolution. Can you explain your position?
Thank you for that question. I abstained because I didn't know too much about, is it the tuition, the resolution for the ASBSU being against the tuition increase. I abstained because I didn't know too much about it. So I felt like I vote yes or no because I was unsure. So that's my answer.
Can I speak on that? Of course. I think it's semi-ridiculous that you abstained and you weren't unsure when it was a 10% increase to tuition next year. That's a big abstention, and I think the student body deserves to know that you did that.
I said, that's pretty safe.
Thank you. And abstain does not go in favor or against. So the vote doesn't matter. But that's my perspective. Yeah.
I just want to provide some insight. So SafeHub, the board that looks at if we should increase student tuition or not, they met, and after reviewing all of the data from every single area across campus, they decided that there needs to be a tuition increase. And so there's been a tuition freeze for the past few years because of the state legislature. But now they're like, we literally have no money. If we keep going like this, like we're gonna go broke. There's no money, if we don't have money to support students and prices are increasing, so we have to fluctuate for that. Neither of us are in ASBSU right now, but I just want to provide some context.
Thank you. The next question is actually for yourself and Jason. Question is from a senior, and it says, I know that you say you want to find solutions for the mental health crisis. What do you think is currently wrong, and what steps will you take to mitigate these issues?
So mental health on campus, especially through COVID, was lacking. The student services were completely overwhelmed. And at the moment, I believe there's only 2 or 3 professional counselors with several grad assistants. And people are welcome to correct me if I'm incorrect. Also, our care system is severely outdated. All they do when somebody care reports you is they send you a pre-written email with a PDF, and you can reply if you choose to. And if you do reply, you can expect upwards every month away. They also prioritize students based on their ability to pay. So whether or not you have insurance, whether or not you can pay for nursing services.
The current system, how it works if you need mental health resources, is that if you have money and insurance, you're placed first on the waiting list because University Health Services has to meet their quota. But if you don't have money, you don't have insurance that works here, you're placed at the bottom of the list. It is not fair to any student that if you need help right now, that you have to wait because you don't have the background and income to do so. And so we want to have these conversations. We're actually having one next week about, hey, how can we support these students financially? How can we rearrange the system so that when a student comes, they're served first, not because they have money.
Gender equity and student equity centers are partnering in an event called Shop Talk that is once a month. And I've had the opportunity to attend and hear concerns from, it's geared towards men. So they're identifying students at Boise State. They don't know about the resources, nor did I when I first attended Boise State. So making those more accessible and equitable and advertising them for all students is very important.
Thank you. The next question comes from a sophomore, and this is a question to all candidates, so we'll answer in the order that we've been going. What is your experience with student housing, and how do you plan on helping with the excessive demand of housing on campus?
Well, thank you to the person or individual who answered that question. I'm asked that question. So I've met with the interim of housing, Linda T, to better understand housing, because on-campus housing and off-campus housing is very important for students who go to Boise State, especially community students, which I travel about 15 minutes, but we've worked at, I mean, I passed a $40,000 bill to go to the student emergency fund, which has been the most requested for actually housing So working with student outreach to provide such funds to help this housing crisis. And this even applies to on-campus and off-campus housing. I even talked to Linda about possibly opening a housing scholarship to be applied for off and on campus as well, providing more resources to help students. We know it's a financial burden of housing and tuition and everything else. That's what we're going to do with housing. We also want, part of our action is also fundraising $2.5 million to help to help improve the student experience. So we've worked with Linda even possibly if with that money were to be raised, which is ideal. We've talked to alumni, we've talked to executive planning, we've talked to advancement to see how realistic this is. This is a promise that can be done because it's never been done before, actually, in all 52 years of ASBSU experience since 1971. So that's what we want to do best.
So the housing crisis is not something that is unique to Boise State University. It's something that is breaking the Trinity Valley and the country as a whole. We have the emergency assistance plan for the students, which I would prefer to increase the amount of $400, which we're not going to do. That's in some areas on campus. Student housing is also very expensive.
We can't change the market, but we know that the university is looking into creating more dorms, student housing. And so we can push for that. As an engineer, I know it takes a long time, especially when you have to go through public entities like the university to get things built. What we can do as ASBSU is if you have a housing problem, you can come to us and we can be experts in like, okay, would it be better if we moved to this kind of student housing? Did you hear there's a Facebook group where you can look at people who are like selling their leases? It's important that every single person on ASBSU is an expert in all of these matters. So then when somebody comes with these problems, it's not like, okay, let's hurry and make a committee and then advocate for you and hurry and fundraise this money. It's about being strategic and understanding what we can do and the impacts we can make to directly benefit students.
There's also a Facebook group for people looking for roommates. So I would highlight that and if people are interested, that is still available.
You need a roommate?
I'm not a roommate.
Yeah, so my campaign definitely knows that housing, on-campus housing is a problem. Not only for Boise State, but for Boise and Idaho in general, housing is an issue. One of the ways my campaign wants to start helping with people who live on campus in the housing is with the meal plan systems. Recently, BSU signed a new contract with Chartwells, and because of that, some of the benefits of being with Airmarks was deleted and no longer accessible for the students. One of those is the times that the kitchen is open. It currently closes at 8 p.m. and opens at 10 a.m. on the weekends. For students in club sports, for students who have a late class or an early class, these times are not accessible. And so I want to incentivize student workers to work those later and earlier hours so that students can get that food when they need it, especially on campus. You know, if they have nowhere else to go, if they don't have a vehicle, that is super important. Sarah, anything else? All right, thank you.
I just met with the Chartwells marketing director. So Chartwells is the person who is in charge of the dining services here at Boise State University. And I asked her, I was like, is there a possibility to maybe extend hours? And she was like, you know what, we're still in our first year, we're still trying to figure it out, but we're willing to probably slide hours. We don't get a lot of students in the morning, but what if we split the hour open 1 hour later and then close 1 hour later? But to incentivize students when only 29% of dining services is students would be unfair to other workers who are working full time and also unfair to other student workers all across campus who have to work late hours.
Can I respond to that as well? Yeah, so I'm not only focusing on the kitchen here in the sub, I want to incentivize all student workers across campus working on at all those restaurants. I feel like it's super unfair, especially for the Towers dorms kids that have to walk almost a mile to the kitchen to just access a simple meal. And that being said, I want to push for more hours accessibility for students and restaurants all across campus. Thank you.
Just to speak on through meal planning, I've met with the director of dining services, to understand how meal planning works. So in order to move up hours of dining, you would have to cut services. So you would have to up meal planning. Like we've discussed it in length. If you cut meal plans, could you increase operation hours? You lose one or the other. You extend the hours to increase longer meal plan hours. You up the meal planning meal plans as well. The biggest problem dining actually faces is theft. They've had to order $50,000 worth of theft this year. It is the biggest problem that dining faces.
Can I rebuttal? Yeah, so I am not only looking at the hours as well. I think that they took away guest meal swipes. It was 15 last year and now it's 5. This is also a problem for students who maybe want to have a guest over for lunch or dinner or even breakfast. And also the meal equivalency. So now you cannot just swipe for a meal anywhere on campus. Once again, it's all in that kitchen downstairs. So the dorm students, they have to walk all the way across campus so that they can use their meal plan instead of anywhere on campus. And so I definitely want to have that conversation with dining, and I plan to right when I get into office. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question is specifically for the candidate SAC. However, the candidates are also welcome to chime in. SAC, do you believe that your lack of leadership positions in ASBSU or other recognized organizations on campus may be a liability? If not, what leadership skills do you have?
Thank you for the question, for whoever asked me that. I do not. I have been here for 3 years. I created my own club called the Brown Mat Club with a few other friends. I was the vice president of that for a year and watched the membership grow all the way up to 60 members before I decided to step away and then join other clubs like ultimate frisbee, judo, and then I decided to step into Greek life itself. Within Greek life, I decided to rise to the ranks of my own fraternity, join a multitude of committees, from social to philanthropy to risk management, and then I even took the chair of risk management in my own fraternity and was even able to be an IFC delegate. I understand that I have never been within the scope of ASBSU, but I do not think that's going to limit me in any way, shape, or form, since there are other candidates who have also never been in ASBSU. Thank you.
If people are concerned with my fellow candidates' lack of experience in ASBSU, I almost would consider that a benefit because we've seen and have experienced the struggles students have with ASBSU. My biggest issue is getting funding as a club president and as a club sport athlete. Trying to work with ASBSU is difficult, and I think people in ASBSU, not necessarily my fellow candidates, forget how difficult that can be. So coming in with fresh minds and new expertise, I think is extremely beneficial.
Okay, thank you. The following question is for all candidates and will be answered in the order that we have been doing so. So across the country, campuses have faced issues with free speech. Do you think that students need to be protected from certain speech on campus, or do you generally support having more speakers on campus?
Thank you for that question. Whoever asked it. Free speech is a fundamental right that was provided in the Bill of Rights. For students to be protected from free speech. Granted, I mean, people have free speech that have been constitutional decisions made by the Supreme Court about hate speech, certain ways in which you can not use hate speech on an individual. As a student government, you would encourage everyone to be nice to each other. If you have a disagreement with someone, talk with them. Express your opinions. Everyone should express how they think. But again, with certain hate speech, we don't condone anything that is very extreme, especially racism, sexism, or any such hateful language. but we would encourage them to be nice to each other, as free speech is a fundamental right.
This is a place of learning. This is a school. We're here to learn, take in more information, new information. That is the point of this place, and we want to keep it that way. Thank you.
I agree with my other candidates that free speech is important. It's a fundamental right that we as Americans have and as humans. I do not support and I do not condone racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, or anything, nor do I think any ASBSU delegates. I do support free speech, but I'm also a strong opponent of protecting students and protecting their rights.
And so what is the balance of that? I think ASBSU, we are supposed to advocate for students, so. But that application does not come when it's aid related. And so we will support you in whatever background you are coming from, because all of us are different. But when it's hate, that's a big no-no. Anything else? You're chilling.
Boise State is a place for learning. It is a community. Boise State is too great for hate.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously we live in America, First Amendment rights for free speech. However, as a student government, my role as president would be advocating for if one speaker was of a certain belief, that we get one that is also of another belief, so that there's a balance. So that students can really kind of develop how they want to have their beliefs, since that, again, is what college is all about, kind of discovering yourself and how you want to live the rest of your life. So, thank you.
Chris, thank you all. This will be the last question for today. For all candidates, in the past year, there has been a transparent divide within ASBSU. How will the candidates ensure that all members of ASBSU will be united despite any opposing views, including relationships with the current university administration and leadership?
Thank you for that question. We value all administration, ASBSU, students, especially to increase transparency again. As if elected, the president does appoint the communications officer, which is a crucial role in communicating, as well as the chief of staff and the government relations officer. Together, we set the direction of ASBSU, and that direction is going to be outreach and constant outreach, getting us out there. I passed a bill help for this suicide prevention for the marketing that athletics does with the football team this fall, and we got our logo on the new projector screens. Like steps like that is marginal gains to get us recognized, and we value administration partnerships as well. They are a crucial piece. We have all the same goal, helping students increase the student experience as well, partnerships with even alumni and business partners and donors. Again, even within our own government, meeting with every me and Zach will go to as many meetings as possible with all the other funding, IESC. We'll be in the joint meetings with the other two branches, but again, it's encouraging people to reach out to constituents. Even encouraging everyone to write one single piece of legislation and what can be the dean or student that they're representing, because it is an important thing to connect with campus and even admin. We want to be a bridge for ASBSU and administration to constantly ask, hey, this is happening. What do you think as the Associated Students of Boise State University? And we work on that as well as constantly reaching out to students. Thank you.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, just 1 second, I'll make sure I get the wording right. So the question goes, in the past year, there has been a transparent divide within ASBSU. How will the candidates ensure that all members of ASBSU will be united despite any opposing views? This includes your relationship with university administration and leadership.
Disagreements are healthy. I think having a variety of opinions is what makes ASBSU strong. It makes any group strong. We need to be united in our stance to support students, and we can have disagreements as long as we're done in a civil way and that we provide recommendations rather than trying to argue.
And that's the biggest thing that Jason and I are running on is we want to set a new tone for ASBSU where we're listening to students and we're seeking their feedback instead of, hey, I think I know what's best. You know what's best, you're an ASBSU, let's argue about it, let's pass a bill that nobody knows about. Right? And so I think this is extremely important instead of saying that you represent students, but going out and doing the work so that their voices are actually heard first before you speak on their behalf. And in addition, Jason and I have worked on numerous university initiatives. I'm not going to spill the whole tea. You can look at our LinkedIn's if you want, but we understand how policy works. We understand how ASBSU works within like the system and how the relationships within the state legislature also work. And so we don't have to rebuild these bridges that have been burned in the past year. We already have them.
I think that goes along. We already have those demonstrated relationships with faculty and administrators. And I think once those bonds are made, they can't be broken. We work with them just as they work with us to represent students, because that is our job and that is our job.
And can you repeat the question one more time, please?
Yes, of course. In the past year, there has been a transparent divide within ASBSU. How will the candidates ensure that all members of ASBSU will be united despite any opposing views? This includes through your relationship with university leadership and administration.
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. I have a unique perspective being in my position as ASBSU Chief of Staff on the Executive Council. In my position, I am in every meeting for the student government. I've been to all of the IESC meetings. I've been to every Executive Council meeting, every Assembly and Senate meeting. So I've heard all sides, and that gives me the very unique perspective of being able to work with everybody and know how to solve issues with different people. Additionally, I will bring up my involvement at TVCC as the 59th student body president. While there, I worked with many different administrators, students, faculty, staff, and I look forward to bringing that to BSU. I also know a lot of administrators, and I look forward to growing those relationships even further if I am elected. Sarah.
Yeah, so one of the main roles of the student body vice president is to appoint people to the General Assembly. And we just want to reemphasize that our platform is committed to creating a diverse student body representation. And I would work hard to make sure that that happens.
Thank you. So with that, we will conclude the questioning for the candidates, and now we will have a 2-minute speech from each candidate with their closing statement, starting with Isaac.
I just want to say thank you so much to Arbiter and the Elections Committee, and my opponents and everyone for showing up today, and the Zoom audience, and all the family and friends that came. But again, we're running on involvement parking action. We've met with administrators from the beginning of the academic year, fully understand what can be done. We are promising what can be done and what will be done on behalf of students. Nothing broad, nothing too. We're going to look into this. We have looked into this. Mental health, we campus food pantry, the universal mentorship program, provost office, fundraising, money, parking, scholarships, the student emergency fund, working with student marketing to increase recognition of student clubs across the entire campus and get that streamlined effort to really promote we're Bronco Nation. We all are watching the football games, basketball games. We all go to the same school. We all work, to help each other out. Like we're Bronco Nation, and that is what we're going to constantly emphasize on.
And to clarify, we have definitely put in the time and the effort and the energy. I can guarantee you that Isaac has done an amazing job on working on this. He has been starting since September. I started with him back in January, and we spent every Sunday for at least 4 hours meeting up, talking about what we wanted to do. We have met with 20+ clubs and club sports and counting. We have met with Greek life and the student body at large, and we are taking all of their opinions, their issues, their complaints, and their compliments into consideration as we move forward with our campaign. Thank you.
Well, it's all one person.
I want to quickly thank everybody for coming. I want to thank all my fellow candidates, Arbiter, for helping facilitate this. Jay and I have spent countless days and hours and nights working on this election campaign since the beginning of the school year. We've been talking about it, we've been meeting, we know what we want to do, we know how to do it, we know who we need to talk to, how to do it, and when we can get it done. A vote for us is a vote for the students. We want to support you. We want to support every organization on campus, whether that's a club, Greek life, anything in between, anything outside, even those obscure clubs that are the coolest ones of all, in my opinion, more than Jedi Club again. We want to support you. We have the relationship with administration. We have a relationship with clubs and Greek life. We want to make Boise State an amazing place for everyone.
Second then.
All right, once again, thank you all so much for coming. I just wanted to reiterate that as your next student body vice president, I will work hard to ensure that equal and diverse populations of students are represented.
Yeah, and just to say our campaign goals again: parking, student club funding, student meal plan systems, and student outreach. And one question that I know you might all be asking: why is a physics major running for student government president? The reason is, and why am I coming back year after year? Because this would be my 4th year of student government. The answer is, it's not pretty, but I love promoting student voices on campus and getting change, positive change for the students, every background, every group, helping them succeed on campus. And I look forward to doing that next year. Both Smith Kazarnoff, and thank you very much.
Thank you to all the candidates. Thank you all for coming, and please don't forget to vote this coming Monday and Tuesday, April 3rd and 4th. You can find the link to the ballot on our website. We will be posted soon, and our Instagram page as well. It will also be sent in a mass email to all students. Voting opens on Monday at 12 a.m. and will close at midnight on Tuesday. The results will be released live at 10:30 in the sub patio on Wednesday, April 5th, and will shortly after be sent in a mass email as well. So thank you all for coming, and thanks to all the candidates. Thank you to all candidates, and best of luck to you all.